6 a.m.
Yeah.
That would be pretty good. But I'm digging. They have mint tea, which is like my favorite kind. So that like made me happy, and I like the little candy sugar pick me up. So I was like that. Let's move in it.
Yeah, yeah. And what is it that you can do to get yourself from a 5 to a 5.5?
Make sure that I regulate my sleep schedule.
Okay,
So
so
that
you
I'm
need
like
to regulate it.
adjusting.
Okay. That's really important for your recovery. From breakfast, tea, things like that. You know. These are good structures you're setting for yourself. You know.
Yeah. Structuring is really important for me.
Yeah,
because
it's a big deal.
Cool.
I mean, addiction thrives in chaos. And when you're able to like have breakfast and have your tea and have some mint in it too, you know. So great. So these are just some you begin to build with clients some rapport using that way. So it's really important with motivational interview that you actually affirm them and you ask for permission. Motivational interview and solution folks really have. Client will hear you better if you don't lecture to them from your therapist seat. But if you turn to them, I usually turn to them. I live in Missouri, okay? Some call it Missouri, some say Missouri, some say Missouri. But it depends on how you look at it. So, but I usually turn to my clients and I say, may I share a few things with you of what other people do that's helpful?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
He said, yeah, sure. Now, I know he's listening to me. Now, would he be listening to me or hearing me if I was just started talking? Let me tell you, he probably would, but he wouldn't have the same interest. You show, I mean, it's a sense of respect and building of that rapport too, but they will hear you better if you ask for permission. And the whole idea is really to kind of move them through those stages of change and then they hopefully make it. The other part that's really big that you incorporate in your practice of the matrix model is Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Celebrate Recovery, Cocaine Anonymous, whatever self-help groups you really have. We do know that they are very effective for most people. Now, yes, there are multiple pathways to recovery. Yes, not all people will not go to AA or NA or Celebrate Recovery and they will choose whatever they want to do and they may have other supports and that's great. But what we know is that for a lot of people, this may be a part-time or a full-time commitment that they do. Like we know that some people commit to self-help groups only during their time of treatment episode or early treatment episode. And they learn a thing or two. And then they move on. I have a client right now that, he doesn't really believe into going to NA. He's part of recovery court, mandated by the judge. He has to go to some self-help groups. And he often comes in now to sessions with me. He goes, it was an interesting topic at the meeting last night. I'm not planning to attend those forever, but I learned a few things that will help me with my recovery as I move on. Same thing, there's research about women, that they use them for a couple of years, and then they resort maybe to some faith-based component in their life rather than a 12-step program to sustain their recovery. So they're helpful for a lot of people, and hopefully you encourage that as you apply the matrix model if you choose to do so in the future. Now the other thing that I always learn in my presentations is that we, the mental health professionals, most of us, and I'm not going to try to have you raise your hands, but most of us have never ever read the 12 steps. And we refer to them a lot. We say, oh, the 12-step program, oh, the this, but we have never, ever, ever read it. We even have a pamphlet hanging on our door, sometimes with the 12 steps, but never read it. So I find this out to be so common, so true everywhere. So you don't have to embarrass yourself here if you feel like it's embarrassing to say. But we're going to read them. And that way, if I ever am in a room with you again, you say, I've read it, I know it there. Yeah. So I'd like to ask that we each maybe take one and read those steps. Whoever wants to start, I'm not going to say. So start with your, let's start with someone at that table.
So?
So she's eating, and somebody read the
I'm
first.
trying to turn it.
Oh, I thought you were eating your orange and she's drinking her tea. I apologize. I was so insensitive.
It threw me off because I was like, oh, that's the hit you button. It's on?
Huh?
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable.
Great. Can somebody from that table read that too? Yeah, I'll bring you the mic.
Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Maybe same table, read 3.
Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him.
Okay. Let's move with 4 over here.
Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Okay.
Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being of the exact nature of our wrongs.
Okay. Let's do 6 here as well.
We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character.
Okay. Let's do 7 over here.
Humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings.
Made a list of all persons who have harmed and became willing to make amends to them.
Okay.
Made direct amends to such people where possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Okay. We can, yeah, good.
Continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted to it.
Okay.
Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out.
Let's go to read 12.
Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs.
Great. Congratulations. Now you read the steps, you know the steps. They'll be on your PowerPoint too. But it's really important to have some idea. And if you truly look at them, this is no different than like a counseling treatment plan. I mean, this is no different than a lifestyle that somebody really wants to come in and change. I mean, there's some stuff coming out of SAMHSA now, that programs that, you know, encourage and include self-help engagement for their clients, that they could increase their chances of success upwards of 400% as a component added to their treatment. 400%, that's a huge number, you know, and these are not my data, you know. So I'm a big proponent of multiple pathways to treatment and recovery, but I certainly do encourage a lot of my clients to attend self-help groups. I usually ask them, give it a try, see what it is like for you. And if you don't like it, let's look at some other supports. But when we have an idea of what the steps are, then we're able to have a discussion. I would highly encourage you. Like early on, let me give you a tip. Like early on, I was talking about NA, blah, 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 you know. I had never read the NA book. How many of you have read the NA book? Good for you. So I had never read it. And I was talking with this client, and he started asking me some pointed questions about in the book, and I felt so dumb in the session. So ignorant. And so I was honest. I usually have this thing, I'm pretty honest and blunt with it. And I say, you know, I really don't know that. I have not read that book, and I will read it. I said, can we make it a project to where, you know, I'll read the book, and then you read it too and refresh it with the client. And then we discuss it together like that. And it was a way of helping him because that's what he was working on. But it was a way of helping me as a professional to really get to a point where I needed to be. So sometimes, you know, you may, if you're doing addiction counseling, you might want to know some of the staple things that exist out there, the AA book or the NA book or the steps, things like. Otherwise, you may struggle to have a conversation with your clients, and they will pick up if you lie. You know, yes.
Do you encourage your clients to try out like multiple groups before
Absolutely.
saying they're done, or do you have a specific number that you suggest?
No, I suggest to them to try, find out whatever works for them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely important that they find something that they like. Now, there are, you know, programs that will mandate those things. And that's fine too. You know, at the end of the day, those who are mandated to treatment do just as well as those who are not, you know. So we got to figure out some way to give them some information, you know. But they got to find the group, home group of their choice and maybe look at sponsorship that way. You're all experts on, you know, curative factors of group activities, so I'm not going to waste time on this one. So we're going to move to some of the organizing principles of the matrix model. The whole idea is you really want to establish structure. Have breakfast, have tea, have... But it's true, you know, exercise, do certain things, time for yourself, you know. And you want to focus really on encouraging them to attend maybe some self-help groups. It could be of any form, but there's got to be some connection with the community. If you look at SAMHSA's working model of what is recovery, you'll find that 4 components are extremely important, 4 domains. You know, you want them to have a home, you want them to be healthy or focus on their health and stay abstinent, and you want them to really find a purpose or meaning in their life, and you want them to feel socially connected. And those are, you know, huge domains that all treatments are trying to really define recovery along those lines. And so, and this is one of the models. I told you it's one of my favorites because it's easy to use, that encompasses those. All right, so you've all probably seen those slides and what parts of our brain are responsible for what. But if you look at just inner memory and reward and judgment, just those 3. And yes, when you drink, coordination, maybe even vision will be kind of out of whack. But if you look at the areas where, you know, most drugs of abuse interact, what areas of the brain, these are the ones that they do. I mean, they impact our reward system. That's why we want more, and we want it again. They impact our, you know, inner memory. They do impact our coordination at some point, and they do impact our judgment. The biggest battle, how many of you, all right, so I'm from Missouri, or I live in Missouri. I am from Missouri now, I guess. We have a lot of tornadoes. That's the biggest thing. I was so afraid when I moved down there. I mean, initially the first few years, I mean, I was in the storm shelter, and I was like, I'm not, because they say that if you see one of those, you will die in a few seconds. Well, if you're on their path, you know, you never know. You could be found a few miles later down the road, maybe scattered into pieces. They're pretty scary stuff. I'm still scared of it, right? I need a therapist over that thing. But let's say, how many of you are familiar with tornadoes and how scary they are? All right, so if there's a siren right now and an announcement is made that there's a tornado coming, you're left to choose with having to listen to something extremely important that I have to say. Life-changing. Or run for your life. What will you do? How many of you will stay here and listen to these life-changing?
It won't be life-changing after death.
What? Guys, at least one of you could lie, say, hey. Right? Be nice, right? None of you will. Because you've been trained and your brain will quickly react to that siren and that announcement, and you're going to go to the shelter and probably follow the people that know how to get there and make sure. fight or flight kind of thing. And so with addictions, that's what you develop, that automaticity, right? Automatic reaction to things, that fight or flight. It's a bad day, I want to use. It's a good day, I want to use. My favorite team won. How many of you are soccer fans here? You know football, the real football. So they won, right? I gotta use. They lost. Darn it. I gotta use, you know. It doesn't matter what it is, the reaction is that. And so when people develop that kind of reaction, you know, they really are not using their prefrontal cortex anymore. And so that's where a lot of the treatment are focused. All right, so you had breakfast. So when you eat, they say that our body releases that dopamine, that I don't know why this is showing. Maybe it's my fault, maybe. Always is, say my kids. Alright, so we made it a little bit. So when we eat, you know, we have a little bit of a release of dopamine from the normal 9%, you know, functioning of it to maybe 150, you know, in terms of percent. And it does last for a while. As lunch approaches, you know, we kind of think about it and we kind of want it, and we kind of, once we eat, it spikes up again. So if you have sex, you know, it goes to about 200%. Now people always ask me if I combine the two. I don't know. They should have done that experiment with that guy in Seinfeld. What's his name? George or something? Maybe, yeah, Costanza, it looks like you know what I'm talking about. So, I don't know, but when you use methamphetamine, for example, look at the spike that you have in terms of dopamine release. 100 times more, 4 or 5 times more than having sex or an orgasm, 100 times more than, you know, kind of like, or 10 times I should say, when you eat food. I mean, it's 1,000%. It's crazy. You're out of this world. And that's why people chase that a lot more. Same thing with nicotine, you know. Same thing with cocaine, you know. And it just lasts a little longer maybe and starts tapering off, or you know, or morphines, you know, if you use any kind of painkillers, you know. People don't do drugs because they're bad. The effect of drug abuse in people's life is bad, both in their health, in their family, in their relationships, in their freedom, in their employment. It deteriorates a lot of things, you know. But they don't do them because they're bad, you know. And so we have to watch that language that we use, you know, with them. They develop this relationship, this intimate relationship with their drug of choice, that it's almost like a divorce. That's why a lot of counselors will have them, you know, kind of really treat it more like a grief and loss issue sometimes as well, or write a letter to their drug of choice, or try to give it up, you know. So, but this just gives you an idea of, you know, in terms of the power that it has in their brain function. Now, this is a picture of a client that's 6 months sober from the tests with this matrix model. And and this is the pleasure that he gets from watching waterfalls, forests, cool pictures, Niagara Falls, you know. But when they show him a cocaine video, look how it lights up. The release of dopamine is much higher, and it could trigger him into what we call a craving. This is 6 months sober. And that's the power that, you know, some of the, you know, that the drugs can have, you know, sometimes over somebody's brain. That doesn't mean that you'll use. But it's always a battle for an addict between this fight and flight and the prefrontal cortex as to what to do, you know, in terms of not relapsing.
There's something in my head just saying to do it. You know, just that craving takes over my body, you know, and I'll pick up and I'll start using again. Even though I know it's not wrong. And I know I'm not supposed to, it'll happen. And it's so hard to explain, I don't know what words to use for it, but it's like torture, it really is.
You'll start to bargain with it, to trying to simmer it down. And usually that's what happens. I end up striking a bargain. And the bargain will be, all right, instead of going through all this gnawing, we'll relieve this by, look, you'll just take this much and you'll only do that amount. But the trick in the bargain is that there is no such thing as that. If I get started, I do not stop until it's over.
What is it about this feature of the disorder relapse that we don't understand? We're clearly not targeting it well enough. We clearly don't know enough about it to impact it. We better see where relapse lies. And for me, that was in the brain, to understand why the pull, what happens that our patients lose this struggle.
All right, then
In
we
the
cough in the
brain, we have
microphone.
these two important systems.
Which was that?
The GO system, the ancient GO circuit for helping us respond to natural rewards that are so important for our survival. And the STOP system, the more recent frontal lobe system, that's important for helping us consider when it's important not to go, not to act on the pull of that reward.
So it's always that battle. I didn't mean to cough on the microphone. I was trying to hide away from it, and I just went. So,
Well, really interesting.
all right. So what do we know about addiction? That's really important. Is that it's a young people's disease, and the reason that I say that is because a lot of research is finding, and this is again research from Maya. A lot of research is finding out that most people who develop an addiction develop it before the age of about 25. After that, it's kind of hard. How many of you are between 20 and 25 now? Okay. So for you guys, chances of developing an addiction from now on is very slim, But if you're younger, you may still, be at risk of, I'm not saying you are. But it begins at a very young age. We have children sometimes 9, 11, 10 years old in treatment, And so they start very early. Not because they want to, but they're forced into it. Or teens, this is a young people's disease. And the earlier that we intervene with treatment models, usually the better it is. All right, so phases of addiction. All right, so have you ever gone up a down escalator? Raise your hand if you have. A lot of you, huh? Why did you go through it? What did you do? I mean, why? Curious. Huh? Raise your hand.
To see if I could.
To see if you could?
Same thing.
To see if you could? All right. So my first trip to America from a communist country back then, Albania, very poor, biggest store probably. So the biggest store we had was probably the size of this back room here, little small mom and pop shops. And my first trip to America, first time on a plane, came to Louisiana, and this friend of mine decides to take me to the mall. And I was like, and he's like, oh wow. One time he said, remember where our car was parked, and see if you can find it. I couldn't, anyway. We went to a store, and I see the escalator, and I had ridden one of those at the airport the day before. First time. So I was like, really cool. So he said, oh yeah, let's go upstairs. All right, let's go upstairs. And I started heading for the escalator, and he goes, not that one. And I was like, yeah, that's the one. He said, not that one. And then I didn't listen. So he said, okay, fine, whatever. So I'm headed towards the escalator. You know how at Dillard's and other places, there's one that comes down, one that goes up, right? So I kept insisting, I didn't know that would be two, you know. So I started going up, and he's having fun telling his friends, oh yeah, it's this Albanian, you know, he doesn't even know. So I started going up, and people were coming down, and I do remember one of them called me idiot as I was going up. I was like, what's wrong with you? You know, I just want to go up, and the thing wasn't changing. I mean, I kept trying, and it wouldn't change gears to go the other way. Anyway, it was a fun story. I made it up, but they called me an idiot. Really, for an addict, getting in recovery is like going up a down escalator. The whole social network that they know is in the drug world. And now they're going against stream. Like, how many of you have heard of Rockfest? The big festival that happens in different places in America, and sometimes they bring it to Kansas City where like 50 bands come together. And anyway, so I made a politically incorrect mistake one day at a meeting, and I called it a drug fest. And, so don't call it that again. But there's usually a lot of drugs present, and you know, they don't look for that kind of stuff when the police or anybody knows you kind of. So people go, and so we had some clients who wanted to go there, and it was a struggle for this one client of mine in recovery, refusing to want to go. He said, I'd love to go, but I know that if I go, I may relapse. And his friends were like, you gotta go, man, it's okay. I'll drink, I just won't give you a drink. I'll use, but I won't feed you a line. You know, they were gonna protect their buddy who could possibly go to jail, but his drug using buddies wanted him to go. And he had to make a decision. You know, it was a difficult decision of staying, because, I mean, you're going up and down escalator. And when you go through that, it's really, they need you at that time. They really do. You are probably one of the first few drug-free contacts that's healthy for them. They may have others as well, but that's healthy for them. So we'll look at some of the phases of addiction real quick. Initially, when people start using drugs, there's a lot of positives. Even if it's illegal, it still has a lot of positives. So it doesn't really, the scale goes on the side of, you know, relief from depression or anxiety or insomnia or whatever. Losing weight, you know, different reasons why people use it. Just having fun, increased energy, increased status. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. And when people just initially use drugs and experiment with them, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It doesn't really develop any kind of conditioning in them. It doesn't, they don't develop psychological dependence or physical dependence. They're just experimenting and having some fun. They may occasionally kind of be triggered to want to do it again. It was so cool. What happens in Philadelphia stays in Philadelphia. But it was all right, you know. The response towards that trigger is very, very mild. They won't do it again. It doesn't overwhelm them. It doesn't take over their life. So they got other responsibilities, other things they're doing. Everything is fine, you know. And they may stop. There's no, if we were to test them, okay, hey, think about the time you used. All right, good. So let me test now, see how your heart rate and your respiration and adrenaline and all of that in your system, if it's triggered, it's not. It's not like they're going to really, you know, respond to it in a physical manner just because if they think about the time that they used. I wanted to remember this because it's important. In terms of family, it's more like, cut it out, you know. It's stupid, you did it, don't do it again. It's not good. But not a big deal. But as people continue to use, they move in what we call a maintenance phase. And still the positives outweigh the negatives, but the negatives are accruing. Now we've heard about this expression like bottom, right? So sometimes I'm rude and I make jokes that are inappropriate. So I'll try not to do that here. But if you look around, when clients tell me, I haven't hit bottom yet, I haven't hit my bottom yet. And so everybody's bottom is different. You know, everybody's bottom is different. And don't laugh, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about like when people in recovery refer to it. So it depends on what you consider bottom. And this could be one of the bottoms for someone, but it may not be. So loss of employment, could be that, they broke up with a girlfriend because she didn't want to deal with them anymore, or they may have financial problems, but this is also the beginning of some physiological dependence on the drug. This is when they're using monthly, at least every other week, something like that, but not daily. And then they have more and more triggers. Now they really, when they think about the place, there's this moderate connection to where, then when they think about where they did drugs, they really want to go there again. They kind of want to do it again. They think about, oh man, Friday, I just can't wait for Friday to get here. It's consuming more of their life. If you notice in terms of what's a priority, and then what activities they're involved in, now this is taking more and more space in their life. And when they think of a drug, it's not like we see their heart rate going up and the adrenaline, but when they go on Friday to the site where they do drugs, or the bar or whatever, but before they even use drugs, we see a physiological response. And this has been done with people. It's fascinating stuff. They wire them up. And then they find out that just by going there, just by going in the airplane to have some alone time, and I'm just saying that, just to kind of I know I'm joking with you, but that was so cool. Like, I wish I had that time on my plane, but my plane was so bumpy yesterday, it was awful. I was scared for my life more than anything else. But once you enter the site, you have some physiological effects before you even do the drug, and then after. So it's beginning to develop some of that program. Now, in terms of the family, this is when really the person who's not using is doing everything at the home, takes over all the responsibilities, no longer in charge of, let's say, taking the kids places, you're screwing up. You really certainly have a problem, you need to do something about it. It becomes a very intense, issue in their relationship. And there's a lot of people who, begin to look at this and say, maybe I wish we could have intervened here. Most people don't. I don't know why, but this is the time when I move then into what we call disenchantment phase, according to the matrix model, where this is the time when negatives start really taking over. They begin to have, especially those who use stimulant drugs, they begin to have a lot of paranoia. I have a friend of mine, his son, he's a counselor, his son got addicted to methamphetamine. And he lives about 2-3 hours away from where I'm at. And I was doing residential counseling then, and he begged me to take his son there. It was like his maybe 10th treatment he was going to. Please take it, please work with him, just see. He was losing hope himself that his son would probably die. And I worked with his son, both residential and then outpatient, and today, he's doing well. He's in recovery, for like 6-7 years now, something like that. And he shares this story very openly. He's an advocate about treatment and recovery support. But he did not believe, for 6 months in my relationship with him, he believed that I faked my accent. I was an FBI agent after him. I mean, the level of paranoia. Our old clients at that level, no, this guy was pretty severe. But they do have that, you know. But they have a lot of relational issues. This is, you know, maybe prison time is here, or you know, maybe, you know, probation, parole, a lot of job losses. And now they're using drugs because they kind of have to. This is probably full-blown physical dependence has happened really at this stage. Any trigger is an issue. There's a response to things, and it's pretty strong. And so you got to, these are issues to address, you know, depending on the phase of where the client was when they come to you in treatment, things to address. Drugs begin to take more and more of their life. And if you look at this time, just thinking about using can trigger for them a mild physiological response. Just thinking about using can trigger for them a mild physiological response. But when they enter a site, that response becomes more and more powerful. You know? So the physiological dependence on the drug is present, you know, at this time. In terms of family, well, put plainly is, I want to kill you. You are ruining my life. I don't know what else to do. We keep paying for your ankle bracelet monitor. We keep paying for your alcohol testing in your car. And those are $400 or $500 a month for a family. They're not cheap. We keep paying for your counseling. We keep, you know, I mean, what else? When are you going to get it? I mean, we keep you in our basement and you turn that into a trash, you know, place. I mean, we don't know what to do. We keep paying for lawyers. I mean, there's a cost to the family. There's time to the family that it becomes very, very taxing, very frustrating, very painful. In a lot of